So in this video, I wanted to talk about the differences between the synastry and the composite chart in relationship astrology. So synastry is chart comparison, where we take one person's birth chart and we overlay it on top of the other person's birth chart and vice versa. And we see what aspects are being made. So if my sun is conjunct your moon or your moon is square my sun, we look at that, and that shows the basic energy exchange between two people that is always going on. And it's very powerful, and it shows a lot about our day-to-day relating and the energy exchange that's going on there. The composite chart is a separate chart based upon the midpoints of the two persons' birth chart. So the two people actually birth an entire new chart, the composite chart. So this chart is created by taking the midpoints of two charts. So if my sun is in Aries and then your sun is in Gemini, the midpoint of that is likely going to be a sun in Taurus, right? And then you do that for every planet with the composite chart. And the composite chart shows who they become together. You know how like when you're in a relationship, sometimes you actually become different with that person. You bring out another side of yourself. And the composite chart shows who they become together. Now, this is controversial, but I personally feel that the aspects being made in the composite chart are more powerful than the signs, but some astrologers disagree. I go by what Robert Hand says, and he says that in his book that we want to look more at the aspects being made, the houses, rather than the signs in the composite chart. Now, the composite chart is going to show more what will happen with the relationship. It can sometimes show, what the future of it holds, even more so than the synastry, but both are equally important, I feel, and they both serve a totally different purpose, right? So the synastry is like the day-to-day compatibility. Can we get along? And the composite is like this powerful force that we become together with the blending of our two energies, and it's like the relationship births the separate entity, right? Both very powerful. I definitely, at this point in my life, I don't look at one without the other. And there's also another chart called the Davison chart, which is like another form of the composite chart that I also look at. And it is based on the midpoint of the two people's birth dates, exactly. And that creates a separate chart. Now, when you're looking at these, don't get freaked out. There's not one aspect that will make or break these charts. Like a lot of people, when they're beginning astrology, they see an aspect and they're like, oh no, I'm freaked out about this. And it's not really about that. It's more about looking at the synastry and the composite and looking for themes, right? Like often in the synastry, you'll have like a double whammy aspect, and then that aspect will show up in the composite chart as well. And that's going to be a major relationship theme. And although there are some aspects that are kind of like red flags, you have to look at the entirety of the charts and also the two natal charts. Like what kind of relationship do they even want? People with lots of Aries or Scorpio, they may prefer more difficulties, right? So you have to look at the people involved as well. So just for fun, here's some of my book recommendations. This book is really, really good. It goes into actually the synastry and the composite chart. And it also goes into the often overlooked aspect called the inconjunct aspect. And it goes into all the house overlays. Sometimes his descriptions can be a little bit too negative, in my opinion, but still a very, very good book to look at. The next one I'll show you guys is called Karmic Connections. Now, this is a book on synastry, and it goes really deep into like past life energies of the relationship, which is really, really good, really helpful. Love this book. Now, this book is just like a pretty small book, but the descriptions are pretty good for the most part. And this is the only book that I know that goes into like women and men separately. So it'll be like man's Mars conjunct women's Venus and women's Venus conjunct man's Mars. And that can be really helpful to look at. It's the only book that I know that does this, although it does miss certain aspects. Lastly, this is the only book I've found on composite charts that I actually like.
It's by Robert Hand. He also has an amazing book on transits, by the way. Yeah, this book goes into the composite chart houses and aspects, although sometimes they can be a little bit too negative, in my opinion, to some of the descriptions, but some of them are really, really good. Yeah, this is the only book on the composite that I really, really like. It's kind of like the composite chart Bible, other than actually, the first book I showed you guys, Planets and Synastry, also goes into the composite chart. Yeah, so out of those two books, those are my recommendations on the composite chart. There's not a lot of info out there.